Hey, what's up? In this video, I'm going to talk about Resharper, and I'm going to mainly just focus on refactoring code on the fly. And if you don't know what Resharper is a plugin for Visual Studio, and it's for productivity and code refactoring and stuff like that. It's super useful, and I was pretty surprised with how smart it is. So I'm going to open up this solution file in 2012, and I'm going to increase the target framework so it has more stuff to point out. Just a little bit more stuff. Okay, so let's start from the top. You can right click on references to remove unused references. I can't actually do that with this project because it will actually remove something that is in use. So that's the first time that this has happened to me, but just be aware of it. So up here, it's going to fade out my using directives because I don't really need them. So I can put my caret over one of the directives and then open up the Resharper context and click on the appropriate context menu item. So here I can just remove unused directives, which is what I'm going to do. And down here it's going to underline my fields because they can be made read-only. Resharper recognizes that I'm only assigning to these fields where they're declared or in the constructor, so they can be made read-only. So I can just press Alt-Enter to open up Resharper menu or whatever, and then press Enter again to select the most desirable item, which is the one at the top, and it's probably what you want to do. So this was once a user control, I do believe, because it has a partial modifier, and that's not really needed in an extended control. So we can just remove that with Resharper and scroll down. We have a virtual member call in constructor. So Resharper will give you an option to mark your class as sealed. Typically you just want to make this base if you really care about that stuff. So here you can invert. It's going to ask me if I want to invert my if statement to reduce nesting, and you can pretty much do this with any if block or whatever, but the ones that are underlined are the ones that can be really effectively inverted. So we can invert that, and there it is, it's inverted. It's like, I think that's a code guard thing is what it's called. Okay, and with this underline on the new, it's just asking me if I want to use an object initializer. I typically only do that with very simple multiple field assignments when there's lots of them. Otherwise I don't. By the way, you can just click around anywhere and you'll find different things to do. Doesn't have to be underlined. So here is colors. So you can click on the color, go over to the Resharper menu, and we can pick a new color from a palette. So we can change red to something else. If you wish to change up Resharper a bit, I've adjusted it a bit. You could just go into options here, go down to C#, and just change the formatting and stuff around. It's not like perfectly identical to the current conventions employed by Microsoft and code analysis in Visual Studio. So yeah, you're probably going to want to tweak it a bit, but it's pretty damn well smart. So let's go on to the next class to take a look for some more stuff. So this is satisfying too, removing the using directives, because you just click on it, press Alt Enter Enter, and they just disappear. Automatically makes your class that much more expressive. You just click on everything and press Alt Enter Enter. It's so satisfying and easy to do. That's a good thing about Resharper. It's very automated. So here is just an unnecessary explicit event hook. So we can just remove that. don't need that. That's just more expressive. Okay, so this namespace does not correspond to the file location, which it does not because we are now in the extended controls folder, so we can rename the namespace. Go into the next class. If you click on the braces here, just around them, you'll have an option to remove the braces if there's only one line. So we can do that. And I'm going to click on this convert to switch statement. I'm not gonna really know at what magnitude it's going to convert these if else's to the switch statement. Sometimes it'll do a lot of them, sometimes not so much. So yeah, didn't really know what to do there. Maybe if I just separate this, make this if, and then hit I really don't know. I want it to convert all of this stuff to a switch, but it does not seem to be working out. Sometimes it will actually refactor all of them so that they can be converted to a switch, sometimes not so much. I'm just going to ignore that and move on. So here is, don't even ask why I'm doing this, it's very old code. So we can click on equals here and we can convert this to use the equality operator to make it more elegant. In my opinion, that's more elegant. Now it underlines my if in green, and now I can convert it to a switch. And I thought it was going to do something a bit more than that, but it didn't. My bad. So let's try removing more braces and see what it does then. It seems to only be able to convert it to a switch if the equals, if we're using the equality operator instead, which is a surprise to me. So let's try that again. Yeah, that's exactly how it is. Okay, so let's go on to the next class. Here it's going to point out the fact that what is it? It cannot resolve symbol buttons. So this is unnecessary XML documentation because there are no parameters in this method. So we can remove that. And this can be declared in an inner scope in the for each. So we can move that. And we can remove the assignment because this is the assignment to this variable is not used in any execution path. So we can remove that. And this doesn't need to be assigned to down there. It's another assignment thing because it's not being used anywhere below here. That specific assignment. It's also going to ask you if you want to use var with your variable names when you're declaring them. I typically only do this when it's a very long name, a very long type name, or if I'm using a generic name like list and then the type name in between the pointy brackets. Because that's just, it's kind of ugly the way the generics look in relation to var. Also, you can use var to align identifiers. So if you have a lot of types declared one after another, different types declared and assigned to, then you can just use var and you can just align everything, and it's hard to explain, but it does make it more readable. And here it's going to underline LGB because it doesn't like the way it's named, and I don't name things like this anymore. I only use full capital acronyms when the acronym is alone, but if there's other words around it, then it should be named like this because you want to be able to distinguish the other words from the acronym effectively. In my opinion, it doesn't really look right when you have the acronyms like that. I don't recall if I've mentioned this, but you can click on colors and open up a color picker to change the color. So we can continue to do that. We can just pick a red. pick full red. It probably, yeah, we'll use the actual preset red color, which is cool. Yeah, we can rename this method here. And tell me that I have a possible loss of fraction, and it is actually a loss of fraction because I'm assigning to a float here, and these are both integers. This side of the expression will evaluate to an integer because they're both integers. So it's going to give me an option to convert to hex, and we don't want to do that. We can just make these literals here a float literal, and that will do it. We also have one up here. And here's a very unnecessary assignment, a condition. Should probably remove that. And by the way, if you have long strings, you can split your strings. So you just click anywhere in your strings and you can split them. I think you have to do that with the attributes. I don't think there's any way around that. And if it underlines your strings and says that they're localizable, then a lot of the strings, you'll have the ability to move the string to the resource file for your project and use that instead. Okay, so with a lot of the for each loops, you can click on the for each and convert them to a link. And I typically only do this if it's a very simple conversion and evaluates to something very small as a link expression. Sometimes you'll get really gnarly long lines. And a lot of times you'll be able to convert the for each to a for and the for to a for each. I never actually had it allow me to convert a for directly into a link expression. Usually you have to do it to a for each and then to a link expression. Okay, so here it's pointing out that this doesn't need to be read-only, it should be a constant, which it should be, so we'll do that. And when it underlines your properties like that, it's just indicating that you can convert your property to an auto property. You can do this with pretty much all of your properties if they have no implementation, well, little implementation, but like in this case, there's going to be, sorry, that's not a good example, but sometimes it will do some refactoring if it's not underlined, like it'll move or have to assign to it in the constructor and stuff. But in this case, nothing really is going to happen. I'm actually not too fond of this example here because label command is something that's placed in the designer view because this is a user control. So I think it will actually just break it, to be honest. I can't see how that works. But typically Resharper is not going to change the behavior of your code if you're using Resharper to make it cleaner. But there are little items and functions and stuff that you can use that will change the behavior of your code. For instance, Alt insert will allow you to do stuff like insert equality members. So I can click from, or I can choose from different fields, and we can just use them to make an equality member. And you'll have like the equals operator overloaded and stuff. So we got a lot of unnecessary stuff here. So we just click, Alt Enter Enter, click, Alt Enter Enter, Alt Enter Enter. And just keep doing it because it's fun. So this can be a link expression if you like long link expressions. So I'm going to try to use format string for all arguments. And yeah, it'll just convert this to use format instead of plus from the looks of it. And it seems to do a good job. I think I did something like this earlier and it actually completely messed up the string, but it's only been lately where I've been finding bugs in Resharper when you use it a lot. Here's an instance where I would use var, where these type names are long. A lot of times if you'll have like a string array in your parameters, it will ask you to use IEnumerable strings instead. That's kind of like a thing that you should do nowadays. And this here can be made static. So this is a method with a little green underline in the front of it. You just make that static. This should be a constant, so I can do that. And then it's going to ask me to rename it to be more constant-y. So we'll do that as well. And here is a dirty abbreviation. So I've been trying to avoid these. Every time I come across GFX in my code, I rename it to graphics, because that doesn't even make sense. There's no letter X in graphics, and that may make sense to like people in North America, but anybody who doesn't really, speak English too well is not really going to understand why there's an X in there, because they pronounce things differently. Well, maybe they do, maybe they don't. But anyways, it's really bad to use abbreviations, so don't do it. Here's a possible loss of fraction. Don't think I've shown you that yet. You can convert this to hex. I don't actually do that. In this case, I would just add an F on there to retain precision, because these are floats. They're supposed to be floats. So save success here can be put in the inner scope. So we can do that. And this here can be made static. And here is an event handler that's not hooked to, because you can tell that it's because the name is grayed out. And typically I would investigate the UI to see if this should be hooked before removing it. But if it's a method, I'd just remove it if it's not really in use. I don't like keeping unused code in my projects. Some people will just leave them in there because it's not really a big deal, because you might use them later. But to me, I like to keep things a bit clean, and as well, unused code is confusing because people will look at it and they'll be like, "What is this for?" And they'll be like really confused. So you could just click on this and just hit Alt Enter, and it's gone. It's gonna point out this empty catch. You're not gonna have an option to remove it. You'll just do that. But really, should this be here? I really don't know. But you can remove it, and it's no longer a problem. And an empty catch is more of a problem than an uncatched exception, or an uncatched area of code that can raise an exception, because at least then you're not going to leave your user's system, or, well, really you're leaving the user's application in an unknown state, which will indirectly leave the user's system in an unknown state if it's an empty catch. But now we just actually have the .NET framework, or the language runtime or whatever, handling it for us by asking the user to either continue or abort the system, or abort the application, that is. Here's a good example of something that you can convert to a link expression. So here's a for each. You can convert this to a link expression. You can tell that it's a very simple for each loop, and it's not going to evaluate to anything too crazy. Anyways, that's Resharper, and I'm pretty well done just talking about stuff. So I'll see you next video.